Today, DC's Attorney General says MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor agreed to a $40 million settlement over a tax lawsuit. President Biden vetoes a resolution overturning SEC crypto accounting guidance, and Mike Novogratz of Galaxy Digital sits down with us at Consensus 2024, reacting to the sudden shift in crypto politics in the U.S. I'm Jordan Smith. Cryptocurrencies are mixed coming out of the weekend, with Bitcoin rising 2.2% by noon Eastern. It's trading above $69,000, up 3% in the first 3 days of June. Ether, on the other hand, is flat for both the day and the month so far, trading just below $3,800. And Solana is just slightly in the red, trading at $164. All right, let's talk about the top stories. President Biden vetoed a repeal of the SEC's Staff Accounting Bulletin, or SAB 121. The controversial piece of accounting guidance tells financial institutions holding digital assets for customers to keep the assets on their own balance sheets. In this statement on Friday afternoon, the president announced the veto, writing, quote, "By virtue of invoking the Congressional Review Act, this Republican-led resolution would inappropriately constrain the SEC's ability to set forth appropriate guardrails and address future issues. This reversal of the considered judgment of SEC staff in this way risks undercutting the SEC's broader authorities regarding accounting practices." Biden said his administration will not support measures that jeopardize the well-being of consumers and investors. Biden also doubled down on his previous comments on wanting to work with Congress on a comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets. The veto came on the same day banking groups sent a letter to President Biden asking him to sign the resolution to overturn SAB 121, which passed both chambers of Congress last month, with the Senate voting 60 to 38 in favor of the resolution. Next, Michael Saylor agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement with the District of Columbia in what the district's Attorney General's office calls the largest income tax fraud recovery in DC history. Today, DC AG Brian Schwab announced MicroStrategy's executive chairman and the company he co-founded will pay $40 million to resolve the tax fraud lawsuit filed by his office. That lawsuit alleged Saylor had defrauded the district of more than $25 million in income taxes. The AG's office says this lawsuit is the first of its kind brought under updates to the DC False Claims Act. It details how Saylor, who lived in the district since at least 2005, allegedly pretended to live in lower tax jurisdictions in an effort to avoid paying taxes on hundreds of millions of dollars of income. In a statement, MicroStrategy told us that this was a personal tax matter involving Saylor and that the company will not be obligated to make a financial contribution to the settlement. Last, Coinbase is pouring another $25 million into digital asset super PAC Fairshake as the industry continues to grow its support of crypto-friendly political candidates. In a blog post today, CEO Brian Armstrong wrote that Coinbase plans to continue investing as crypto rules take shape around the world, because it's a key part of how the company defends its customers' rights and advances economic freedom. Last week, Ripple donated another $25 million to Fairshake, doubling the blockchain firm's initial contribution of $25 million last year. The next day, the Web3-focused crypto venture firm Andreessen Horowitz also pumped another $25 million into the PAC. Chris Dixon, A16Z Crypto's managing partner, wrote on X last Thursday that the latest contribution brings A16Z's total donations to Fairshake and related entities to $47 million. He wrote that, "As an industry, we need to keep up the momentum and show that the US can lead in creating the next wave of blockchain innovation." All right, let's continue our coverage of Consensus 2024 in Austin, Texas for our main story. Last week, Crypto World's Mackenzie Sigalos sat down with Mike Novogratz, founder and CEO of Galaxy Digital, to discuss Washington's shift in support for the crypto industry, along with institutional adoption of crypto now that spot Bitcoin ETFs have been trading for nearly 5 months.
A lot of people feel like they've gotten whiplash in the last few weeks. The SEC having this reversal in its stance on spot ETH ETFs, a lot of legislation, positive pro-crypto legislation winding its way through Congress. Help me read the tea leaves here. What's going on in DC?
Like, if this is whiplash, I want more of it. Listen, what happened was really simple. On the same day Joe Biden came out and said, I'm going to veto this arcane piece of accounting legislation from the SEC that's pro-crypto, Donald Trump got on stage and said, there are a lot of people that love this crypto stuff. I'm going to be your crypto president. And Twitter went wild. And the crypto community, which for years has been saying we need bipartisan solutions, finally said enough. I tweeted something I thought funny. That was, there are more crypto owners than dog owners. And what are the Democratic Party? We're the party that hates dogs. And really quickly, Mark Cuban was on Twitter. There was a roar of people on the left saying, what are we doing? And, politicians respond. They want to get reelected. And so you first had this accounting SAB 121 vote. We saw 9 influential senators cross over. And that was a big surprise, including Senator Schumer. Thanks, Chuck. But great, because he's the leader of the Democratic Senate. And then you had the SEC out of nowhere call up all the applicants and say, oh, we're going to get this ETF done. I don't have inside info, but I would suspect someone at the Biden White House said, we got to diffuse this issue, called the SEC and said, change your damn mind.
Yeah, and we also saw a lot of Democrats change their stance with respect to Fit 21, which passed the House last week. More than 70 shifted over.
That was an awesome shift. And so for me, it's game over. People have finally got it. This should not be political. The Democrats don't want to lose an election over something as stupid as a new technology that's good for the country. It had been Elizabeth Warren really with her anti-crypto army as the blocker, and she's got a lot of power. And these last 2 weeks have been horrible to be Elizabeth Warren because the Senate and the House broadly rebuked her and said, Elizabeth, enough. You're costing us this damn election. Shut up.
Yeah, and it does seem like voters care about it a lot more than they did in the last presidential cycle. A Harris poll showing that 1/3 of voters care about the political stance on crypto.
I remember when abortion used to be the hot issue. They're these single issue voters. Not all the 55, 67, or there are 85 million crypto users. What if 20% are single issue voters? That's 17 million single issue voters that aren't necessarily left or right to start with, right? You've got libertarians that love Bitcoin, but you've got progressives that should love crypto that cuts out the middleman. And so it's not an inherently political technology.
5 months into the spot Bitcoin ETFs, roughly $58 billion in assets under management across all of those funds. My question, though, is more about the institutional interest. So I was going through all those 13F filings, looking at which banks newly had exposure to Bitcoin through this spot ETF. And it's not a lot. Morgan Stanley, $270 million. Not all the banks have exposure. And the ones that do say that this is more a reflection of what their wealth management clients are asking for, not an endorsement by the bank of this asset.
But you wouldn't expect a lot of banks to put Bitcoin or Google stock on their balance sheet.
Hedge funds aren't really jumping in as much.
Hedge funds are mixed. Some hedge funds have huge positions. Often those are arbitrage positions. Listen, we're seeing movement. Prices are significantly higher in crypto than they were 3 months ago, trading close to the highs. And that's with interest rates giving us no love, right? At the beginning of the year, we thought the Fed was going to cut 5 to 6 times. Now they haven't cut at all and don't look like they've cut. And so the crypto markets are strong because we have this sentiment shift. Crypto is now an asset class. It will be next year. It will be forever. And it wasn't that way 2 years ago. There was risk around the asset class, and it's been de-risked. And so every day, some Morgan Stanley salesman is picking up a phone and trying to sell one of his high net worth clients crypto. And you're just going to see a constant drip of money come into this space, and prices go higher, especially as long as the government keeps spending.
I mean, you are a macro guy. You mentioned the fact that, interest rate cuts don't seem like they are in the cards this year. Are you anticipating any sort of...
Listen, we could have a cut in September if all of a sudden growth slows and you get a little bit of inflation. But we're not going to get the 5, 6, 7 cuts.
And to your point, usually you had Bitcoin track those decisions so closely, and they've just, broken free of that.
But same with gold, same with silver. The markets are telling us that we should be damn scared about what the government is doing with our deficit. Right? We're adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days to our giant pile of $36 trillion in debt. If you're a Wall Streeter, if you're Stan Druckenmiller or Ray Dalio, that's existential to this country. And in an election year, no one's going to talk about it. But we've got a populist left president, and we had a populist right president, and now he's a candidate. And so, populism isn't good for fiscal, stewardship. Populism spends. And when you're spending like that, assets like Bitcoin are going to go higher.
You've been talking about the herd is coming. That's your catchphrase. Said that a few years ago. We have seen more institutions come into the space. I mean, you come from Goldman yourself. You work with a lot of major institutional names from the TradFi world. What's the sentiment? What are people not saying publicly, but they feel about the asset
They are
class?
waiting for the endorsement from Congress through a bill like Fit 21, through an infrastructure, through a market infrastructure bill that gives them clarity. No bank that makes as much as JP Morgan or Goldman wants to put any reputation at risk on a new technology when the rules aren't clear. And so if SAB 121 gets wiped out, you'll see places like Bank of New York and State Street enter custody. That'll make those places feel more comfortable. But we need the full endorsement from Congress, SEC, and the Fed. And then you're going to see a stampede of those guys into our space. My business is going to be harder because the competition is going to go way up, but it's going to bring a lot of assets in.
Predictions for the end of the year. Are we going to see this legislation actually get passed into law? Are we going to see a turnover in the White House? Are we going to see Gensler out?
Listen, I think Gensler is going to be gone at the end of the year, one way or the other, or at the beginning of next year. If Biden or Trump wins, Gary has probably served plenty of time at the SEC. I think the election, we're going to literally go to bed on election night not knowing who's going to win. Right? There's six or seven swing states. They're all going to be tight. Right now, they're all trending Trump's way. But remember, it's a long time. In those last couple months, both parties spent $1 bazillion in those states courting those independent voters. And I just really believe it's going to be one of those, I can't believe we're going to bed again not knowing who's going to win. I think crypto prices are going to be higher. There's a 40% chance we get legislation this year. You're going to have the Senate put together its counterparty. Remember, like House passes bills, Senate makes laws. And so they take each little piece of it a little more seriously. You mush those two things together. I do think Senator Schumer will put it to a vote if they do that, and President Biden wouldn't veto it. And so the path is clear. And if it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen early next year.
All right, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow.